Right, so the first thing we're going to do is turn our calculator on. Sorry, ladies, I forgot to put fingernail polish on. Okay, so we're just talking about the fraction button at first. This is where we press this box over box 1, and we get the fraction button coming up. And so we might enter a fraction like 5 on the top on the numerator and 8 on the denominator. Okay, and when we press equals, it still is expressed as a fraction. And if we want to make it into a decimal, we can just press this S to D button here. And if you press it again, of course, it'll come back as a fraction, which is really handy. Sometimes we need to have it written as a fraction, sometimes as a decimal. That one was a terminating fraction. Okay, if we want to put in what's called a mixed numeral, we have to press this button here, but first shift and then that button, and then we put in 5, say, for example. Use our cursor, and we might do 5.5. Oopsie. Use the cursor to go down, and I always like to get that back on that line there flashing, and there we have 11/2, and similarly we can get it to be a decimal. Back again. Good party trick, that one. And if we want it back to be looking like that, we have to actually go shift S to D, and it'll come back looking as a fraction. Now I'm going to look at this next button where we've been talking about reciprocals. And this button here, reciprocal, it'll give us a reciprocal. Say if we had our original 5/8. See how I could press 5 and then I can press the fraction button? That's okay to do that. And now if I press this one, it will make it into a reciprocal. Remember what I said? The reciprocal, number and its reciprocal multiply together to get 1. So that's that reciprocal button. Now if we want to take a decimal and put it as a fraction, say for example 0.7, we just press 0.7 and press equals, and it comes out as 7/10, and the same goes again, coming back to be a decimal again. The beauty of that fraction button is, say for example we have 0.85. What happens is when we put it in to our calculator, it reduces it down to the simplest form of the fraction. The beauty of that fraction button is, say for example we have 0.85. What happens is when we put it in to our calculator, it reduces it down to the simplest form of the fraction. And while I've got 0.85 in there, it's 17/20. If we press the S to D, you can see that that is a terminating decimal, meaning it stops. Some decimals stop at 1 decimal place or 2 decimal places, and some go on a bit further. Okay. Now if we look at, say, something like 2/3, and we press equals, still the decimal, there it is there. And you can see on this one that the 7, it's actually rounding up. We'll talk about that later, but there's only a certain amount of display on your calculator, and then it stops. Okay, so that's called a recurring decimal. That's where one digit's recurring. Say, for example, if we did 2/9, we would have, that's the same digit recurring there. Okay, so that didn't work, did it? All right. Stop. Okay, so we'll have a look at 1/6. And making sure there we have the 1 doesn't repeat, but the 6 does. Okay, and then something like 2/7. And you'll see that a sequence of numbers are recurring, 2, 8, 5, 7, 1, 4, and then it goes into the same loop again. Okay, so that's a recurring. If we wanted to use our exponent buttons, we've got the squared button, and this one's to any power. Okay, so if I had, say, 2 squared, and I'll just hit that button there like so, it'll tell me that it's 4. If I wanted to say something like 3 to the power of 6, I'd have to press the X box. I call it the X box anyway. And there we have our answer. So that's called, they're called exponents or powers or indices. And similarly, we can find square roots and so on. Okay, so this is straight up button. Say we wanted to find the square root of 25. Oh, sorry. Square root of 25. Just put that in there and that'll give us our answer 5. You'll have to realise here that it's actually positive 5. Only if there's an equation do we get 2 answers. Okay, so this one here, oh, excuse my language. Say if we wanted to do cube root, shift cube root. There we already got the cube root. So cube root of 8, press that's 2. And if we've got any other higher order roots, press that, excuse me, shift that one. Oh, bastard. You're going to have to do this. Okay, well, I just got that syntax error because I did something wrong. If you do something wrong that's not mathematically correct, you'll get this sort of result. So let's clear that. And now we're talking about irrational numbers. They're numbers that you can't express as a fraction in the form a over b, where b is not equal to 0. And we have some special ones. We have what's called pi. It's associated with the circle. See, there's pi, the symbol pi. If we press equals, you can see that the pattern doesn't repeat. If there's no pattern to those numbers, and therefore we know it's irrational, we can't write it as a fraction. The calculator knows that. Okay, another one that we might have might be root 5. And root 5, there we have it, is irrational as well. A pattern, a whole lot of sequence of numbers that have no pattern to them. Okay, another special one that we also have is this one here. You can't really see it on the calculator. Yes, look very carefully. There it is, it's E, okay? Now that's flashing, that box is flashing there because it wants a number in it. That's where I made my mistake before. So let's put a number, let's put 1 in there, and there's E. It's actually a really beautiful number between 2 and 3, and you will learn more about it in your later courses. Okay, so that's briefly irrational numbers. And now we're going to learn about entering large and very small numbers into your calculator. So if we press this button down here and then press, say, 6, we'll get 1,000,000. Okay, if we press, say, 9, we'll get a big number. If we press, say, 14, it goes to what we call scientific notation, which we'll learn about later. So we can use that button to put large numbers into our calculator. We can also use that button to put small numbers into our calculator. Say, for example, if I put 10 to the minus 1, it's writing it as 1/10. If you want to see it as a decimal, you have to press S to D. If I did 10 to the minus 3, it's still seeing it as a fraction. What about if I did 10 to the minus 6? Yeah, we're still seeing it as a fraction. What power do we need to see it as a decimal? Let's have a look. What about minus 9? Seeing as there we have it, 10 to the minus 9. And if we press S to D, it's still like that. And there's another trick that I will show you later on how to change that into a fraction, into a decimal. We have to trick the calculator because it only wants to display it like that. Okay, so that's another way, that's the way of looking at small numbers on the calculator. So if we wanted to enter something like 3 times 10 to the 5, we just go 3, and the times is actually included in the power button, the exponential button, and there it writes it as a proper number. So we might say, okay, 4.5 times 10 to the 9, and there it's written like so. But if we went 4.5 times 10 to the 10, it goes into scientific notation. So it's only got a digit display of 9. It goes up to power 9.